Hello, friends. Welcome to an episode. Where the fuck have I been? Another episode of the Trevor Ohlsen Show, episode number 78, on Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. I am your host for the evening, the day, the night, the new year coming up. Trevor Ohlsen. Good to be here. I haven't done a podcast since July. July 29th was the last time I posted. I just checked on Patreon. And I've been gone for months. Now, I've been back now for some time, and admittedly, I was kind of questioning if I wanted to keep doing the podcast, if it was a good use of my time, if people were enjoying it, all these sort of thoughts in the time that I took off. So which we'll get into everything that I went off and did, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep doing it, and I had some people be like, you're posting too much, and I gave that a thought, and I was like, no, fuck that. Like, all these podcasts that I love post all the time, and so it was just a lot of internal stuff, and probably me being lazy to some degree as well, and I don't want to do that. So it is Wednesday, and I'm going to get back into doing the podcast on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I think a lot of good comes out of it for me, maybe not for you, but it's my way of, it's one way at least of formulating ideas and solidifying opinions and formulating ideas, I suppose, as well. And it's just a way for me to think out loud and just to have some fun along the way. So I plan on coming back, and I am back. And so here we are. Welcome to the show, episode number 78. 78. I told myself in the beginning that I was going to do it for a year, and I did it for around a year, just a little less. It's been over a year now, but I've been gone. So, anyway, I plan on getting back to it Wednesdays, Saturdays. Thanks for everybody who messaged me and asked about, all two of you asked about the show, and if episodes were going to start up again. And a special thank you to all of you who stayed on Patreon as well. So anyway, but let's catch you up on what's been going on for the last few months, why I went and disappeared. So it was a secret, and it's going to become publicly known today. A lot of people in my hometown know about it just because word gets out, and you go out to a bar and you talk, and yeah. But I went and participated on Sweden's largest television show, known in America as The Great Swedish Adventure, and over there it's known as Allt för Sverige. Allt för Sverige, which translates everything for Sweden, which I think is it sounds like a war cry, like everything for Sweden. Start chopping heads off, fucking chopping off balls on the table. So I went over there, and I should back up. I auditioned for this show in February of 2020 rather, of February 2020, and it got put off for over a year due to COVID. But I went through a 4-stage audition where I did a video submission, and then a Skype interview, and then they flew me to New York, and then one more Skype interview, and then I got the part. And so the show itself is Allt för Sverige, The Great Swedish Adventure. The concept and idea and premise of the show is 10 Swedish Americans go over to Sweden. So I'm one of the 10. So as you probably guessed it, I'm Swedish. I'm in the high 90s for how Swedish I am, upper 90 percentage wise. But 10 Swedish Americans go over to Sweden, get immersed in Swedish culture, and learn about their family's history and heritage, both individually and collectively. And then there's some arbitrary competitions along the way so people can get eliminated. So it's this wholesome show. It's really a cool show. It's this wholesome show, and it's all about the story. It's all about. It's not like American television, because it's technically a reality show in Sweden. It's not like American reality where it's all drama and bullshit and nonsense. This is all about. I can use me as an example, and all the other 9 people. It's all about our stories and going back to the places where our family, where we came from, like going back to our roots. And it's not about drama. It's not about nonsense. It's about the familial narrative for these 10 individuals. And I was fortunate enough to be one of them. And so I went over there, and we went north, south, east, west. I mean, we went everywhere, all over Sweden, thousands of miles, shuttled around, thrown into a van, and you're thrown into this van with 9 other people with differing opinions and worldviews and beliefs, and you just kind of, you get really close to all of them. And there was definitely moments of butting heads, which is to be expected when you just throw 10 strangers together in a van, in a car, for weeks for weeks at a time. And so there was some butting of heads, but overall, I mean, even when there were those moments of tension, we all worked through them. And I can only speak for myself, but I know that talking to other members of the group as well who participated in the show, it was a really, really unique, incomparable, one-of-a-kind experience. I can't give away details about who won or how far I made it. I made the mistake of telling some people. So if you see this video, don't comment what I told you, because the show actually hasn't aired yet. It airs in January, and it's exclusive to Sweden. And so, but it's Sweden's biggest show. Millions of people watch it, and it'll be really cool to see what happens in January when it comes out. Just what happens, because it was my first television show that I ever went on, and it was like I said, it was a super unique experience. And so that happened. I flew out July 29th, and I was gone for quite a number of weeks. And then when I got back from that, I ended up connecting with I think I can say his name, John, who is on the show as well. And him and I really hit it off, and he's a music producer in Indianapolis, and just this really charming, handsome, fun dude. And him and I hit it off and got pretty close while we were on the show. It was like the weirdest way to meet somebody. And he lives in Indianapolis, and so we reconnected once we got back from Sweden. And I went and stayed down at his studio for a week. And then as soon as I got back from there, I was home for 4 days, and then I went out to Los Angeles with my friend Kevin for 2 weeks. And so I've been gone for like close to 3 months. And yeah, definitely more. I've done more traveling this year than any other year of my life by far. I mean, even if we don't include the Sweden trip, I've now been to I think I hit 17 new states this year, because I hit 15 on that road trip I did back in March, and then I went to Las Vegas in June with my sisters, and then I went out to Los Angeles, like I said, just a few weeks ago, and I had never been to California. And so I think 17 new states this year, which is really exciting and cool. I'm happy that I'm beginning to see the world. It was a deep hunger that I had at the beginning of this year in particular. And I think, any of you who had been following me since back then, you heard me just go on and on about, I need to take this road trip. I need to I need to go do it. And then I went out and did it, and it was one of the best things I ever did. I will say one of the best things you can do for yourself, from what I can tell, is go take a solo trip somewhere. And not yeah, I'm not trying to give advice. I don't want to do that, but I will say, it was a really special time for me, and it was an endeavor of self-reliance and just wanting adventure and wanting to see more of the country. When you never leave your state, you have this narrow perspective, and how of course it's like that's what you're gonna have. It doesn't matter. You'll have a narrow perspective if you live in California and you never leave California, or New York or wherever. So when you get out and see all these different states and the different cultures and just how the different ways of living your life, and then especially, and I've only been to one foreign country now, but going to Sweden, like that's a total change. You really start to see how things can operate differently due to the different circumstances that we have. So, for example, the healthcare system in Sweden and the free education system in Sweden, they look at America and they go, why don't you do this same exact thing? And one lesson that I did learn while I was over there was you just can't compare the two. Sweden is about the length of California and has 10 million people. Michigan has 10 million people. America has 330 million people. We're massive in comparison to Sweden. All right, we're back. There's a strong possibility that I'm going to lose the video. Like, we just had a little skip here, as you noticed. I've officially decided I need to use something other than my phone to film these podcasts. I can't remember the last... every single time my phone is going out, and of course the day I get back, the same thing. The problem's not going to go away because I didn't change it. So I just deleted like 600 photos off my phone, and now I have 5 gigabytes of space available. Hopefully that can make it. Sorry, I think you just had like 3 minutes of dark space with no visual. It was weird. Yeah, and so it's hopefully working now. I apologize. But yeah, I just learned to not compare the two because Sweden is so massive, or rather, the United States is so massive in comparison to Sweden. It's 330 million people. Sweden's got 10 million. It was just everything over there in Sweden seemed much more manageable. If you take Stockholm, for example. Stockholm is Sweden's capital city. It's big. It's beautiful, gorgeous. I could live in Stockholm. There's under 1 million people there. That's their biggest city. It's like just under a million. I think it's like 900. Let's find out. I think it's like 948,000. Population, Stockholm. 975,000 as of December 31st, 2020. That's their biggest city. Think of New York or California. I mean, just we're so much bigger, and so you go to Stockholm and it's beautiful. And one thing I noticed in particular was that just how clean it was. It was so clean. Obviously people told me there's some sections where it's not very clean, but everywhere I went was very clean. And then very few homeless people. I saw maybe a dozen the whole time that I was there. And that's because of the social net that they have kind of catches people if they fall, so to speak. But like I said, it's just too different. It's just too different from the United States. And I don't know the answer for the problems that we have here. But I just learned that it's not as simple. There's no simple answer, so to speak. But anyway. So, just been doing a lot of traveling. Did the television show out in Sweden. That's coming out in January. Went to Indianapolis at John's studio for a week. Went out to Los Angeles and California for a couple weeks. And now we're back. in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I've just been getting back into my routine. I'm no longer working at Anytime Fitness, and it's due to the fact that I used up 4.5 years of vacation in 6 months. You kind of have to be there in order to work, and they were totally cool. That was to be expected. Even when I started working there, it was under the, like, we both knew it was going to be temporary and not long, and they're totally cool and in support of my music career, and they were totally all for the television show, for everything, and they need somebody to work there who's able and willing to work full time, and I can't be that person. And so it was an amicable separation, so no hard feelings to them. And so I'm no longer working there, and so I've been getting back into writing mode too, which is really good. I think I might have been blocking, so to speak. They talk about writer's block, and I have blasted through that through different methods. The main method being Julia Cameron's morning pages method, where you just spew out 3 pages, whatever comes out of you, and it clears your mind and it allows you to write. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from that is that you don't have to be in the mood to write in order to write. And so I read this book, actually it's right here, that my friend Kevin gave me. It's going to be backwards, but Manage Your Day, Build Your Routine, Find Your Focus, and Sharpen Your Creative Mind. So this book is kind of about time management, and but it's all focused around kind of entrepreneurial. Is that how you say that? And people who are in the creative world, so whether it's film or music or art, whatever it may be, it talks about, you have to make your creative pursuits a priority. You have to schedule them in. You have to do them first before you do anything else, or they're not going to get done. And that definitely seems to be the case. And so, but when I got back from my road, back in March when I took my road trip, I felt pretty lost goal-wise, because I had just spent the last 8 months recording my album, which still fucking isn't out. It's gonna come out. I'm gonna start promoting it, I think, very soon here, and promote it for coming out in mid-January when the show comes out in Sweden. Just timing-wise, and so keep an eye out for that. But what was I just talking about? Shit! I forgot that this happens where I just totally space out. What were we talking about? Damn it. Writing. Oh yeah. Back in after I finished my album, I didn't really know what to do, and so I went on this road trip, and it was great. And then and then in between there, I was anticipating the television show, and now that that's done, it's like, okay, what's the next step now? And so now I've been getting back to writing, and I've written 6 songs in something like the last 10 days, and which is great. Man, that book reminded me of, oh yeah, you have to make it a priority. You have to be disciplined with it. You can't just wait for motivation. You can't wait for inspiration. You can't wait for this aha moment. You just sit down and you write. And that's a really valuable lesson. And then you can apply that same attitude and same energy and mentality to other parts of your life. So I've said, for example, you don't have to be in the mood to exercise in order to go exercise. You don't have to be in the mood to read in order to read. We think that we need the right space, we need the right time, the right energy, and all those things are good, but they rarely fall into place regularly. And so it just comes down to discipline at the end of the day. Being a disciplined writer, being a disciplined person with regards to physical and mental health, being a disciplined person with regards to educating yourself. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And that book was a fantastic reminder for me. And so for all you creative people out there who feel like you're waiting for that inspiration and it's not coming, I would suggest abandoning that route. Although you may have days of inspiration and something was just going to happen, and I've had that too. But in general, you just have to be disciplined with it. I would suggest checking out Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. I think that's a staple for me as far as understanding creativity and how to be productive creatively. And then that book I just mentioned, it was great. It was really just simple reminders of prioritizing your craft and your art and scheduling it in and doing it first and before you get overwhelmed with emails and work and other pursuits that you have going on, other responsibilities. But Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, I think every single creative person should have, because it deepens your understanding of creativity, and it gives you there's practical exercises in the book that allow you to become unblocked, so to speak, if you feel blocked, which can definitely happen in creativity, especially if you are kind of grinding away. You have to make time for other things. You have to make time for play and for adventure and exploring and for your life in general, because as someone who writes songs and as a creative person who writes songs, you're not going to have anything to write about if you're not living life. For example, I remember in my early 20s, or maybe even when I was 19, I'm trying to write these songs, and I've always liked love songs, as you probably know, and I'm trying to write them, and I remember sitting in my aunt and uncle in my bedroom at the time when I was living with my aunt and uncle in River Falls, Wisconsin, when I was going to college in Minneapolis. I was like, how am I supposed to write about this when I haven't experienced it? And that's kind of the hard truth is, until you experience something, you're not going to be able to write about it as beautifully or perhaps as in depth as you would like to, because you haven't experienced it. So you're right, you can write what you think love might be, but until you feel it, until you feel the deep emotions that come along with love, the ups and downs and the bliss that can happen, and then the pain that you can feel when perhaps it ends, which it most likely will when you're young. Once you experience it, then you can start to write about it more in depth, and your writing will be better. And so it's this idea of kind of, filling the tank up. If you write and write and write, you kind of empty the tank, and you need to fill that tank up by having a life, by having an adventurous life, by doing exciting things and taking risks and going off places alone and traveling and seeing culture and seeing different people and doing things that scare you. And you have to do these things in order to have things to say, because I remember Joe Rogan talking about comedians who end up just talking about, their bits basically just became them at the airport, talking about them at the airport, because they're just always touring. And so they're always in airports. And so they just start talking about that. And Joe Rogan argues, he's like, you got to have a life. He's like, you got to limit how much you're touring and go off and have adventures and do other interesting things besides just touring. So if all you know is, if your world just becomes one singular thing, that's probably what you're going to end up writing about, because that's what's going to be on your mind. So it's important, I think, for all people, but especially for creative people, to have an intention of living an interesting life and going out, taking risks, having an adventure, seeing new people, new perspectives, learning new ideas, and ultimately, at the end of the day, at the bottom of it, it's about living your life, having an adventurous life. And it doesn't happen for most people. Most people have this idea that they have to settle in and settle down and get married at this age and have kids at this age and have this type of job at that time and have this 401k set up and have all, and it becomes very, very rigid. And there's some benefit to rigidity, and there's definitely good that can be said about having a healthy, routinized days that are productive. But you have to break that mold from time to time. You have to go out and have that adventure, and most people don't. And when they get into that rigid routine, and they perpetuate those patterns, then it becomes more and more difficult for them to go out and do something different, because different is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can bring about fear and anxiety, and fear and anxiety can freeze people and hold people in place for years at a time, if not perhaps their whole lives. And so it's important, yes, have that rigidity to some degree, but be able to break that mold and have those spontaneous moments of, or just make it an intention, make it a point, like, okay, I'm traveling twice this year to these places, or I'm gonna do one road trip once a month. And then a lot of people will be like, well, I have a family and responsibilities, and like, I know, not saying it's easy, but I'm just saying you have to live an interesting, exciting life. You have to make your needs a priority and meet them, or you're going to regret it, and you're going to become a burden to the people around you, because you're going to feel like they're holding you back, when in reality it's your own internal stuff that's holding you back. This became a deep podcast. I do like that about the podcast. It always just ends up where it ends up, and I never know where it's going to end up. And so far so good with the video staying up. So those books were just great reminders, man. Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and then that one, Manage Your Day-to-Day, Build Your Routine, and Find Your Focus and Sharpen Your Creative Mind. Those were good. And so I'm back now. I'm in the Upper Peninsula. I'm going to be going out deer hunting here in 5 days. It's November 10th. Yeah, the 15th is in 5 days. 5 plus 10. And I'm going to be, I only bought a buck tag this year. And I was so pissed, because I went out and set up where I am hunting this year. And I was out there bird hunting not too long ago, and I saw this really nice big 8-pointer. And I was like, I'm just going to buy a buck tag this year. We still have venison from last year a little bit. I was like, I don't want any to go to waste, and I don't really need too much this year. So I'm just going to buy this buck tag and hopefully get that big 8-pointer. And then I talked to my cousin who lives in that area, and there was a big 8-pointer hit on the road not too far from where I saw that big 8-pointer. It could be a different one, but if I'm being logical and objective and just putting 2 and 2 together, due to the proximity of where I saw the buck and where it was hit, it's highly probable that was the buck that I saw that got hit by a car. He told me that, and I was so pissed, because I've never actually shot a buck, and I thought to myself, that would be a really amazing first buck, a big rack, and just would have been a really killer first buck. So maybe he's still out there, but he probably got hit by that car. But anyway, good to be back, folks. I'm going to try to get a camera. I do have one. I just have to figure out some timing things. It only films for 20 minutes at a time. Maybe I can shut that off. I'm going to get a camera so I don't have to keep losing the footage every time we do this. Thank you again for your patience as I was gone. Maybe you didn't even notice I was gone, in which case, fuck you. But no, this was fun. Like I said, I'm going to be back here Wednesdays on YouTube and for everybody, and then on Saturdays, Patreon episodes. So if you're interested, head over to patreon.com/Trevor Ohlsen. You can sign up there and show your support. So thanks so much, friends. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Be safe. Keep moving forward. Keep doing your thing. And I will see all of you on Saturday.